It was a cold and rainy autumn night. I was driving along the winding road, looking for passengers. Suddenly, I saw someone waving to flag me down. I stopped and they got in. When I asked for their destination, they replied, 5th Street. I continued driving, lost in my own thoughts. When the passenger suddenly said, "Stop here, I've arrived." After they got out, I resumed my route. As I drove through the rain, I noticed someone standing by the road, signaling for me to stop. I don't know why, but an inexplicable fear gripped me. Perhaps it was because they were standing next to a cemetery. Despite my fear, I stopped out of a sense of compassion. It was cold and raining after all. When my car's headlights illuminated the person, I saw it was a woman dressed in very thin clothes, shivering in the cold. I quickly got out, gave her my jacket, and invited her to get in. Out of curiosity, I asked her, "What are you doing here at this hour?" She didn't answer, only letting out a deep sigh. I asked her for her destination, and she gave me an address. I silently resumed driving. Throughout the journey, countless questions raced through my mind, but I couldn't find any reasonable answers. In the darkness of the night, whenever the road's lights briefly illuminated her face, I caught glimpses of her through the rearview mirror. She remained silent, staring blankly at the dark road ahead, her expression distressed. After about 20 minutes, I stopped in front of a house and asked, "Is this the address?" She nodded in confirmation. As she got out, she leaned into the car window and said, "I don't have any money with me. Let me go inside and bring it." Before I could respond, I saw her, still wearing my jacket, walk into the house. After waiting about 15 minutes, I got out of the car and went to the door. I rang the bell, and after a few moments, an elderly man opened the door. He asked, "Can I help you?" I explained the situation to him. Suddenly, the old man began crying. Startled, I asked, "Did I say something to upset you?" He replied, "No, son. Come in, and I'll explain everything to you." Filled with fear and curiosity, I stepped inside. In the corner of the room, I saw a middle-aged woman holding a newborn baby, her face wet with tears. Confused, I asked, "Where is the young woman?" "I'm in a hurry. If you could kindly pay the fare and return my jacket, I'll leave." Suddenly, the middle-aged woman burst into tears and said, "She's in the cemetery." Shocked, I stammered, "What do you mean she's in the cemetery?" The old man, his voice heavy with sorrow, continued, "She was our daughter, the mother of this baby. She passed away during childbirth. And now all that's left is this child. And these nightly events." Confused and terrified, I asked, "Nightly events? What do you mean?" The old man sighed deeply and said, "Every night at this exact time, our daughter comes back to feed her child. Every night, the doorbell rings, and we hear the same story. Someone brought her here in their car and is waiting for their fare." Overwhelmed by fear, I couldn't say a word. I hurried back to my car and drove away as fast as I could. When I finally got home, I realized I had forgotten to take my jacket back. The next morning, plagued by curiosity and fear, I got into my car and drove to the cemetery, the same place where I had picked her up the night before. With trembling hands and heavy steps, I entered the graveyard. I looked at the gravestones one by one, my heart pounding. Suddenly, I froze. There it was, my jacket draped over a grave. My knees felt weak as I stared at the name on the headstone. It was her. It was the same woman. Tears welled up in my eyes, and with a heavy heart, I left the cemetery and continued on my path. A path I'm not sure where it will lead me.